Hello, welcome back to That Which Binds Us. This is episode 9. This is also part 2 of an episode that we never released with Ryan Brickley. Ryan, can you say hi?
What's up?
We do owe Ryan an enormous apology. I'm saying we a lot. I fucked up the audio when Ryan recorded the first episode, so he was gracious enough to come on back and record another one.
Happy to do it.
So we're just going to copy paste this episode. No, I think we're going to keep it fresh. I think we're going to keep things fresh and fun and light. George, what do you think?
There's just an infinite amount of content when it comes to Ryan. So we won't need to copy and paste. We're going to bring a lot of fresh content.
A lot. And you guys aren't even going to know the difference because nobody listened to the first episode.
There you go.
Besides Jack.
Besides me. I cried the whole time listening to how fucked up the audio was. Yeah, that was a rough one. But we're back. We're back, and some may say we're better than ever. Ryan, would you agree?
Wholeheartedly.
Something that was fun on the last episode we recorded was Ryan was butt naked the whole time.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
Yeah, we didn't ask him to do that. We actually told him not to do that.
Yeah.
And he showed up with everything out.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of what I do on podcasts.
Nobody's watching, so why not?
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Why not? Take the opportunity, you know?
Great. We should probably introduce who Ryan is.
They already know. Everybody listening just knows.
Okay. Well,
they just know.
Actually, no, I want you guys to do an introduction and maybe cry if you could.
Okay.
Each of you separate tiers.
You start. I'll think of the saddest shit I can think of, George.
Okay. When it comes to the man, Ryan Brickley, no amount of words can introduce a man.
It sounds like we're giving a eulogy at his funeral.
Right? That'd be amazing.
But yeah, okay, Ryan Brickley. Ryan is a childhood friend of ours. We grew up together in El Dorado, Kansas. Went to the same church, at a lot of the same community. Ryan and I are the same age and also the same birth order. Yeah. That's the phrase.
Which we
birth
just
order.
Found out. That was, mind blowing.
In both very large families. So we're both number 6 in very large families. And yeah, my earliest memories are with this man. And so, yeah.
So how similar do you think that makes you guys? You guys both being the 6th oldest or 6th oldest in your family.
I would say I feel like we probably have relatable experiences with having older and some younger siblings. But I wouldn't say we're similar personality-wise. I would say we're pretty polar opposites, but we both have the ability to I feel like get along with everybody, and so that's probably why George and I just always got along because it was like, oh, this makes sense. Same age, we have similar interests.
You were kind of the dynamic duo of comedy because Ryan was just the bits guy. Yeah, Ryan is just funny, always throwing shit at the wall, and George was just always down to hanging on to the joke, laughing, joining in. Yeah, you guys were
George
fun
was the
to be around.
Perfect hype man to my prepubescent comedy. It was amazing.
We were really just the yin and yang.
Yeah.
Well,
that's perfect.
And it's funny because you, George, were my I liked you a lot. Basically, I've always liked you, but you were still.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, I just had to preface it because you were kind of also always my twerpy little brother. And it was you and your friend, Ryan, were my twerpy little brothers that I liked being around all the time. I went and hung out at Ryan. I went and hung out at your house when George would go. Yep. And I would just hang with you guys. I would play video. I remember enjoying being around you. And I think it's just because you were both funny people to be around. You made me laugh.
And on the flip side of that, to George and I, it was oh my gosh, this older person wants to hang out with us. This is dope.
Totally.
How do we not mess this up?
It only recently occurred to me, George was talking to me probably a year or two ago, that it was weird that I liked hanging out with, specifically him in this analogy, but it had never actually occurred to me during that time that it was weird. Yeah. Only until later I was oh yeah, you were 4 years younger than me. That's
right.
14-year-olds don't hang out with 10-year-olds. That's not really normal, but
yeah, that's true.
Some about 4 years was so distinct because you always were just that much ahead of us in some big life step. Like, you got a phone before all of us, and I was like, whoa, he's got a phone. And it's like, whoa, he starts driving. Like, oh, he can take us places. This is so dope.
Yeah.
Like, you always had just some little thing about you that separated us in a way that we just idolized. Yeah. So it was perfect.
Well, it also ruled when I got a car, because then I could take us places. We could go.
The old Buick, baby.
That Buick, we could stuff as much shit in there as we wanted. We could go to Thunder games. We could go to the nasty little cabin at the El Dorado
I
Lake.
was just talking to somebody about that hockey game, and to this day, it's been my only hockey experience.
No.
What?
It wasn't hockey.
I've never been to a hockey game with you.
Sorry, Thunder is in Oklahoma City Thunder, NBA.
LOL. Did we all not go to a Thunder hockey game?
No.
Bro, what friends are you talking about?
Oh, that was my other group. That was my side. That was my side piece group. Sorry, I forgot about that.
Okay, as long as there's a side
You are
piece.
on the That Which Binds Us podcast with George and Jack Crewell.
That's funny. No, okay. Yeah, so a small plug for my hockey experience. I have none besides one game.
Tell us about it.
And it was everybody that I was talking to like in last week was like, "Oh my gosh, hockey, it's amazing. Like love it. Love seeing the fights, love the action, love the game itself." And I'm like, the one hockey game I've been to, there's no fights. And it was like super low scoring. So it was super boring. I think, and also like the quarters or whatever it's called.
Periods
really confused
Blech.
me. I did not understand the
Was that a period joke?
No. I wish I was that clever. I was literally just like
Right, George,
appalled
you
that
sexist
hockey's a
pig.
sport I didn't play, and like periods and not quarters. Ew, gross. But the period jokes was where I should have went.
See, own it. Just take that joke.
Actually, yeah. I do hate periods. And women,
I hate
actually.
women. Yeah.
Gross. No, that doesn't make sense.
George, just laugh like you did back when we were little. Okay. Be my little laugh bitch.
Oh my god.
Okay.
So where are we at? How far are we?
30 minutes.
50 minutes, guys.
Just the intro. All right, yeah, we're just going to do the intro.
And that's it. Thank you guys for coming on.
I don't remember anything we said.
Well, I was going to say, because we were talking about my...
Period.
Yes.
Sorry.
We were talking about the first time I got my period.
He was 4 years older than us, so he beat us to the
That's
punch.
true. Another milestone that I hit before you guys.
One we've still not caught up to. It's really weird.
All these years.
No, we were talking about my Buick and all the shit that we'd put in it. Mm-hmm. And I think one of my favorite things that we did as kids, and you could say it with me, Brokeback Buttercup.
Oh,
You
yeah.
guys didn't say it with me. Let's try that again.
Yeah.
And you can say it with me.
I was thinking of like things we did more often.
Okay, wait a second.
In which I was going to say something different.
Okay, but I was talking there. So say it with me. Brokeback Buttercup.
Buttercup.
Oh, is that when I say it?
Yeah.
At that time?
Yeah. Okay,
all right.
one more time.
Go.
I got it.
1, 2, 3. Brokeback Buttercup.
Buttercup.
So Brokeback Buttercup.
Are we recording right now? Is that? I thought we were off. I thought we were like not recording all that. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry.
No, we've been recording for the last 15 minutes.
Oh gosh, wow. All right.
Oh yeah, I just wanted to tell a few stories from.
So far, our audience has no idea what we're talking
we're
about.
gonna-
I know. That's what I'm trying to get there.
Okay, so we need to back up before.
Okay, let's back up. Before
Buttercup.
All right. Fuck Brokeback Buttercup.
Well-
that'll come later.
Whoa, that was
Yeah, easy.
aggressive.
Calm down.
That's my
okay?
bad, guys. I'm really
Yeah.
sorry.
I have
That
a
was-
tattoo
honestly,
of Brokeback
you-
Buttercup on my body.
Actually, we need to get
I would
tattoos
get
of Brokeback
Brokeback
Buttercup.
Buttercup. I would get that tattooed on my body.
You guys heard it here first.
you think-
Ryan and Jack are getting tattoos. I was joking.
No, I actually would if you guys did.
Listen, audience, George will fall into the peer pressure if Jack and I get it.
It
So,
really wouldn't take much.
Yeah.
You'd get
You
it,
already
right?
have a tattoo.
I'd give George 3 Trulies, and he would get an American Eagle tattooed on his back, guaranteed.
Would you?
Not an American eagle.
Oh, but a different country's eagle. Because you hate America.
All right, the Peru eagle's kind of dope though. No, I wouldn't get a giant eagle on my back.
You wouldn't?
No, confidently I can say that I don't want an
How
eagle
big of
on
an
my
eagle would you get?
back. On my back?
Yeah.
What's in it for me? What's in it for me?
Jack will give you $50.
Will you pay for the tattoo? You're gonna at least pay for the tattoo.
I'll pay for the
And
tattoo.
50 on top.
I'll pay for the tattoo
dang.
as long as it's bigger than 8 inches. You wouldn't know what 8 inches is if you saw it.
I mean, 4 inches seems pretty satisfying to me. So, I think.
People do say size doesn't matter. I've heard that said.
Yeah, hypothetically.
I've heard it. Not to me. Nobody's had to say it
Not to me,
but I have heard it.
size isn't really an issue for me. But I know I've heard it said.
Oh my God.
We are getting off on a tangent
Ryan,
here.
can you please give the context that I failed to give earlier?
Okay, so about like our trips.
I don't know. I was going into
BBB.
something and
Okay.
you guys said I couldn't do that
Okay,
anymore.
so God, this is horrible. Okay, I wish
BBB.
Yeah.
Brokeback Buttercup.
BBB, but before BBB,
So
we did-
BBB.
wow, this is a lot of
Wow.
B's.
Wow.
We did other trips, other adventures. We went to Oklahoma.
After BBB. This is a
All right.
BBB.
Okay, let's start over. Let me start from the beginning. BBBB. It was BBB.
That was like the first thing
Was that
we
the
did.
first thing we did?
Yeah.
No. Yeah, it was.
What, like were you in high school?
I was 15 or
Jack was
16
in high
because I had my car.
Jack was 16. We're all 11, 12, 13 range.
That's insane.
That is-
You were 11 years old when we went and stayed
Damn,
in a
yeah.
cabin in the woods.
Perks
Yeah.
of our big families. Our parents were like,
They
yeah,
didn't give
go
a
ahead.
shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were happy to get rid of us.
Get murdered, please.
Yeah, it was literally just a cabin in El Dorado Lake.
and the cabin is like
you were
$30 a night.
you were old enough to like put a deposit down or whatever.
Yeah,
like
you had to be
rent it for a
16
night.
to rent it.
That is so sketchy.
Yeah.
Think about like teenagers now that could do that. We
Yeah.
were homeschooled, naive children.
Yeah.
Not doing anything bad in there besides eating
But-
way too much junk food.
5 people should not have fit in that
Yeah.
cabin.
Oh yeah,
All
it
right,
was a 4-person cabin.
Let's give a layout of the cabin.
Okay.
Do you wanna lay
No,
it out?
you go for it.
So you walk into this spacious cabin. Right in front of you is the bed. It's a bunk bed. And then you have to the side of that, it was just a single
It was
bed,
just
right?
bed. There's 3. Yeah, it's for 3 people.
Three
It was
people.
2 total beds though.
No, a
one
bunk
bed,
bed.
and then the bunk bed just had a top. It didn't have a bottom.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that adds up to that cabin's level.
That's how I remember. I remember the
We had
tiniest.
5 people.
Yeah, for sure. No, we definitely did. And
I don't
we
remember
had,
anything after like 11 p.m. So I don't know.
And then right in front of the beds was the only table in the whole cabin, which I'm pretty sure we put our TV.
Yeah,
on.
that wasn't for food.
Yeah,
for
we're
us.
not going to put TV. Well, okay, and let's now that you brought up the food thing, let's get into that. So, listener, the Creewells are notorious for being the worst snack food selectors. So, for some reason, me and the other friends that were on this trip decided Jack's responsible. He's 16. George is always making good choices. Let's have them
He's
go in and get our
11.
snacks. For some reason, we didn't go in with them, which I still am angry. I lose sleep about today. They come out with every Hostess dessert you can think of. Ho-Hos, Little Debbie's, the double chocolate.
I'm still confused why this is bad.
Yeah.
I'm still honestly not hearing.
This is
anything.
why it's bad, because you guys. So that's the food you got. You didn't get any anything salty, and then to hydrate for 36 hours, you got us each a jug of chocolate milk.
Half
That's
gallon, baby.
half gallon of chocolate milk. No water. Water. If you wanted water, go drink it out of the lake. You're not gonna hydrate in that cabin. Not a chance. Your arteries are gonna be clogged.
Wash down your Hostess cupcake with chocolate. With chocolate milk.
And we didn't put this together until we got to the cabin and we started ravaging
Which
for
is like
food.
30 minutes away from the
Yeah.
closest grocery store.
Because I don't even know how we found that cabin, honestly.
I just looked online. I
Really?
just looked online at the El Dorado Lake and saw a
amazing we
cabin. And I was
found
like,
that.
I wonder if you guys would be down to go to a cabin. And
Yeah,
we
of
asked
course
them.
we were.
15 minutes from our home.
Yeah, and we did it.
It was
Yep.
dope.
We played football on the beach.
Yeah, the next
day.
morning. That was fun.
Yeah.
Not really.
So is this not a good memory for you? I remember this so fondly.
No, it was a great trip. I had a blast. But I wasn't that sporty. I only played sports with you guys.
That's true.
Fair.
And then
Gosh,
also, I
decisive
had the
feeling.
hangover of chocolate milk and junk food from the night before. So I felt so in pain running up and down that beach.
Well, and no sleep because we played video games
yeah.
until
For sure.
3 a.m.
I remember being around the campfire and like we mentioned before, I was 11. And we made hot dogs, and for like the entire time I just had a wiener on a stick.
Yep.
And just kept swinging it around.
I think you put the stick between your legs and were like swaying back and forth.
That's something you do.
Yeah, and I just ran that into the ground.
Yeah.
And
Ran his wiener into the ground, in case you were wondering.
So I think we need to talk about our families, because who would let us do that? And we alluded to it before, like, why was that just okay? And maybe it is okay. Maybe it wasn't that bad that we were doing that. But Ryan, tell us a little bit about like your house. Because I remember going over there, and I remember like you were pretty young compared to your next oldest sibling, right? How much older is
8
she
years.
than you? 8 years
older than me.
Yeah.
And they were like the family that lived in the country.
They
for
were
us.
country,
We lived in the
country.
city,
Yes.
and it was like we're going out to the country.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which LOL is only like 10,
Yeah, like a 10 minute
miles
drive.
maybe outside of El Dorado.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember thinking it was like a forever drive.
But it was the house you couldn't like ride your bike to.
yeah, right.
But yeah, so I remember what it was like being in your house. I remember what it was like staying the night at your house. But what was it like for you growing up in the house? Number one, like with all your older siblings. But then once they all moved out, when it was just you guys, like tell us about growing up.
Yeah, so I think I was only in that house until I was 10 or 11. So I don't have a ton of memories besides just like very vivid like birthday parties or those types of memories. But I only had I only had 3 older siblings living in that house at the time. And then my twin sisters who were beneath me. But that house was super fun. We were outside all the time, me and my twin sisters, and just explored. And it was great. I had a lot of just childhood memories at that place. We had a pretty cool tree house that was really sketchy now that I think about it, letting kids play on it. We had a big rope swing with our trampoline. George and I would play on that thing for hours.
Yeah.
We
slept on the trampoline a
slept
couple
on the
times.
trampoline.
Really?
Yep. Yeah.
I remember always hearing coyotes.
Yeah, for
and,
sure.
And you would never let me off the hook of being afraid. You were like,
Yeah.
there are coyotes.
Yeah.
And just
George is
we're good
pissing
with
his
this.
pants.
We're
Ryan
good.
isn't
We're
helping at
good
all.
with this, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Looking for
My
you.
toxic masculinity started at a young age there, shaming George for being remotely scared, even though I was probably petrified as well.
But you weren't gonna show it at least because you ain't no pussy.
Not a chance. So just a lot of those types of memories. I had a big birthday party one year. I think it was maybe my 9th or 10th birthday, and for some reason, like half of the people in our community were there, and I don't understand how. I think literally my mom must have invited them. I don't think I had that many friends. But
I'm sure like Gabe had like a beard at this point.
oh
Like,
yeah, for sure. Yeah, it was bizarre, but it was like to date like one of my favorite birthdays. We just had a big airsoft party, and
That's so funny.
a lot of people got hurt.
Well, George and I, because we brought this up in the last episode too, and realized that like that was not fun for me. I remember that.
Honestly,
being
I didn't
miserable to
remember
me.
you being there. If
Really?
I'm being honest.
Then maybe I'm thinking of a different airsoft party, because I remember having an airsoft party at your house with a lot of
No,
people
I'm just
there.
like reinforcing. It must have been miserable for you because
It
I
was
don't
bad.
remember you.
Thank you. It was bad for me, but it was because I cried in front of people, and that made me feel embarrassed. 'Cause
when did you cry?
somebody shot me point blank with an airsoft gun, and I acted like I wasn't sad crying or like in pain crying. I was like mad and annoyed crying.
Yeah.
So I was like being really obnoxious about it with my cry, and
Gotcha.
I felt immediately embarrassed and then immediately so seen by everybody that like I think I just hid the rest of the time.
Yeah.
Probably just like hung out with your mom the rest of
Probably.
the time.
Christine.
Christine, what's up, Christine? I'm just gonna stay in here. If that's all right. Do you have any Band-Aids and chocolate milk? I think.
We always had Ovaltine. We weren't rich, so we didn't have jugs. Of
Yeah,
chocolate
that's
milk.
right.
Yeah.
We got the good stuff.
The beauty of Ovaltine, though, is you can put as much powder in that
Oh,
milk
yeah.
as you want.
Yeah, exactly.
I definitely want to hear more about like your childhood and your home and having all those siblings. But something I'm really interested in now is like we talked about it. You're 3 years younger than me. George is 4 years younger than me.
Yep.
Neither George and I have sniffed the idea of having kids. And you have 3 kids now?
3 kids.
Tell us about that. Why did you do
So
that?
when a man loves a woman,
Keep
and
going.
So I hate that you told me to keep going because that was going to be the end of my bit, and then you told me to keep going, and now I
That's
feel
improv,
awkward.
baby. Yes, and
Yes, and
Yeah, so I have 3 girls. One is almost 4, one's 2, and one's like 3 months old.
what's
And
that like?
it is the hardest thing, and I know you hear that a lot, so that's a cliche thing to say, but it is definitely the most challenging thing. Not in a physical or financial way at this point yet, but definitely more emotionally. It's the hardest thing I've ever done. Probably because there's stuff from my own emotional childhood stuff that I'm walking through, figuring out, trying to understand, that hinders me in some ways to feel like I can connect with them and talk to them about their emotions. Obviously, my oldest is almost 4, so it's like not in deep conversations yet, but just talking to her about how emotions are good and how it's okay to feel angry and to feel sad about certain things, but how, like, and this is just us, I don't know if this is right, but how it's important to learn how to control and regulate those emotions at times and be able to control yourself, so you don't do something that you would regret later on or whatever. But yeah, so that's tough because, you know, working, and this sounds really terrible, but like working a full-time job and then coming home and dealing with a highly emotional child is like the last thing that I have the emotional room for at the end of the day. And here my wife does it 9+ hours a day, and I'm like complaining about the 2 hours I have before bedtime. So go women. But yeah, so I mean, it's definitely the most challenging thing. But like the other night, I told my daughter, she was talking to my wife Janae, and was just not being respectful. And so I called her over. I was in the other room and I called her to come see me. She came to see me and immediately started like screaming and crying. And the funny thing is like in my childhood, if I would have done that, I would have gotten beat. Like there wouldn't have been a talk. It would have been straight to physical discipline. And so she did that, and we have this thing that we talk to her about, and we just say, smell the flowers, blow out the candles. And so I try to really teach her breathing habits.
That's cool. Where'd you learn that?
My wife did it one time, and I was like, that's genius. So
I'm stealing that.
yeah. So yeah, as an adult, I'm like, okay, when I get stressed, I'm like, smell the flowers, blow out the candles. Damn it.
that's awesome.
So yeah, I did that with her. It was not happening. Like she was just already amped up here. Sorry, this is a longer story than you probably are caring to hear.
No, I'm here with you.
I'm in it.
Yeah, so she didn't. So I was like, okay, I want you to go sit in your room, and I'll be in to talk to you in a minute. And so
Wait, before you go to the next, can I ask what you're feeling in that moment? So like you said that if you were a kid and you were doing that, your parents would have reacted probably emotionally as well,
Yeah.
in their own way.
for sure.
So I'm sure you're feeling some, heavy emotions and probably like anxiety and wanting to quench the
Yeah.
screaming.
Oh, for sure.
So talk me through not only what is happening, but what's happening inside of you, like your
Yeah.
experience with that.
Yeah, so the funny thing about that is like I can sit in this podcast and say the right answer, but in all honesty, I'm still wrestling with that desire to just squash the screaming. Like another thing that my wife said, and I'm sure she got this from because she reads a lot of articles and books and different things on parenting and is much more knowledgeable than I am with it. But she talks about how kids aren't a burden and how a lot of times as parents, we just look at them as time consuming, joy sucking, whiny burdens, and how it's like they didn't choose to come into this world. Like we chose to have them. And so really what I'm trying to do, and what I don't do obviously great all the time, is I'm trying to remove myself from the situation and kind of be looking in from a bird's eye view and be like, okay, yes, this is frustrating that she's screaming right in your ear, but like, you're not going to help the situation if you get down and scream right back at her. That's only going to throw gasoline on her already really intense fire. And so a lot of times, like, that's what I try to think. And do I do that perfectly? No, not at all. And my wife is 3,000 times better at it than I am.
It sounds like we should have Janae on this podcast.
Yeah, seriously.
What are you,
You
doing?
guys are
here?
really
Yeah,
missing
is she
out.
free tonight, or is she?
So yeah, that's just kind of the mindset. And obviously there's times where we both blow up and yell, and that's hard for us after, because we know the effects of that for our kids. And so we hate that, but there's also a lot of beauty in that moment when you mess up. And I know I'm going to mess up 1 million more times throughout my kids' lifetime. But the beauty in that is that you can then pull them close to you and be like, I'm sorry. Like, I yelled at you, and that dad should not have done that. And that's just like one of the really pretty surreal things to me as a parent, is like showing my kids, I don't have all my crap figured out. I messed up here, and I'm going to own up to that, and I'm going to apologize. I'm going to put myself beneath you and like apologize because I hurt you. And so that's just like, and that's just, I mean, that's just relationship in general, I feel like is. And so that's, I feel like parenting has shown me a lot about relationships just in general and how to have healthy relationships. And so, yeah, so I'll finish up the story about her screaming. So went in there, she's still screaming, kicking the wall, kicking her bed, hitting the mattress, which is, I mean, you know, thinking about it now is kind of hilarious because she's this 3.5-year-old little redheaded, adorable little baby, and she has all this anger just like festering out of her. And so I just tell her, I'm just like, okay, you're mad. I get it. But like, hey, you did this, this, and this, and that's not okay. You disobeyed mom and dad. And so there's consequences for our actions. But I was like, I get that you're mad, and I get that you're super, super angry about this. And it's like, it's okay. You can be super angry about it. I was like, I told her at one point, I was like, you can scream as loud as you want. And that sounds really creepy on this podcast. Like, scream as loud as you want, little kid. No one's going to hear you. That's not what I was doing it as.
I wasn't even close to thinking
Yeah,
that, but okay.
That's hilarious. Well, that's creepy of me to say. So just cut that out. But I was just like letting her acknowledge that the emotion she was feeling was completely
Valid.
okay.
Yeah.
Don't
And
suppress
valid.
it.
And like, yeah, it's okay. Mom and dad get angry about things. And like, you know, so, I mean, I went out there after she finally calmed down. My wife was like, that was 30 minutes. I was like, wow, that was,
Oh, shit.
yeah. So it's like, so
Wow.
by the end of it though, we did the smell the flowers, blow out the candles. We talked about it. I explained to her why we went through this, why it was hard for her. And yeah, by the end of it, part of her consequence, she didn't get to watch a show before laying down, so I just laid her down then. And
You monster.
I know, right?
I thought you were a good dad until you said you went way too far, bro.
Horrible. And so I brought in a book, and she just laid in her bed, and I got to read her a book. We do songs every night, and then she gave me a hug and kiss, and was just like completely calm. She was laughing by the end of it. And so, like, let me say this to all the parents who are probably listening to this podcast who are much more advanced than I am. That's like a 1 in 400 times that it ends that beautifully.
I was going to say, I think you've got to figure it out.
A lot of the times it's like Janae and I will swap, like one of us will get too heated, and then the other comes in and is like, hey, calm down. Like, she's just a kid. And then like 10 minutes later, the other one's like, hey, calm down. She's just a kid. Like, and we're tag teaming in and out of the arena here. But yeah, so I mean, I don't pretend to know jack squat about parenting, but what I do know is just what I've talked about so far that's worked well for us, and we're going to just keep leaning into that, and I'm sure learning more and more as the years go on. So
Wow.
did I just talk for like 47 minutes?
I loved
That's
every
what it
bit of
felt like.
I wasn't even keeping track of time.
I hope you just cut it at like the part where I talked about the smell the flowers and blow out the candles. That's the it.
I
That's
think I'm
the end.
keeping the whole thing. I loved it.
All right, so 3 things I gathered from that.
Wow.
Listen.
3. First was smell the flowers,
Blow out the candle.
blow out the candles.
Yep.
Incredible. I'm keeping that. Second was the emphasis you put on not making your kids feel like a burden.
Yeah.
That's just like incredible. And we both came up in big families. So like, I don't know. I feel like that is a feeling that a lot of big family kids can relate to. If you're like
sure.
the only child, you're probably not going to feel like a burden because
for
your
sure.
parents are.
Yeah, you're their whole world at that point. Yeah.
So that's my take on that. So I'm like so impressed that is like something you're emphasizing. So that's the second one. And then the third one was apologizing to your kids. And you put such an emphasis on that. And I'm just like taken aback by that. That's like so cool. That you're like, what you said, putting yourself beneath your own kid. It's just something that I know was not modeled to us.
Yeah.
So I'm just like so impressed. So that's all.
That's literally all credit to my wife. Like, she's the first one that I saw apologize to her kids. And I was like, ooh, that's powerful. Like, probably for the kid, but like more is the parents to kind of check ourselves of like, we don't have it all figured out. Like, let's be humble here. Like, we don't just have all the secrets and all the answers. Like, yeah, we're still human, just like they are, just adults.
Bigger.
Larger.
Yeah.
Jack, what are your thoughts? Do you have any thoughts? Are you going to have a kid soon?
I'm not going to have a kid soon, but I do want you to be my dad.
Yeah, are you guys adopting or?
Actually, we're putting our kids up for adoption. They're all burdens. So
They're all burdens. We apologized, and then they took the control, and now they actually
They have made themselves somewhat of a burden to us.
we are so stressed.
No, I think it's beautiful. It's gorgeous. Especially the way you talked about apologizing, which obviously it's funny that it hits George and me in very similar ways. But I love the idea of teaching your child that they can be right in a situation.
Yeah.
Like they do have it figured out in that situation. Or like even her screaming and you coming in and being like, yeah, scream. Like that's like your feeling that makes you want to scream is actually the correct feeling right now.
Yeah.
And I'll help you understand it and help you process it.
Yeah.
But the screaming is not actually bad right now.
Yeah.
And the idea of a child walking away from a situation with their parents feeling like, yeah, I'm in control of this. Like I know who I am. I know how I feel. I know what to do. Like
I can control the emotion that I'm feeling. Like, yeah.
And I'm not like a slave to it. I'm not a slave to my feelings. And I'm also not a slave to my parents because when these feelings overwhelm me, now I'm just even more of a burden to them.
Yeah.
Which I just, it was so quick in me to shove those feelings down.
Yeah.
To stop myself from being a burden.
Yeah.
But I can only imagine the amount of, or the level of emotional regulation I would have had come high school if I was able to process and articulate my feelings.
Yeah.
Because when I was 3, my dad came into my room and talked to me about my feelings. And then when I was 8, my dad talked to me about my confusion and my worries. And then when I was 14, my dad talked, whatever, like all those steps and those important parts that I did have questions about and I did feel unregulated about all the time. But instead of being able to articulate and process that and regulate it, I shoved it down, which caused anxiety. And I genuinely know that I'm still paying for that now with my anxiety. And I'm sure you are too. Like I'm sure what you explained with your daughter, it sounded like there was a lot of anxiety in you and trying to regulate yourself. And like, I think it's the biggest gift you're giving to your daughters is that they will not be dealing with the anxiety in the same way and to the same level that you currently are.
Yeah.
And they will have the wherewithal to do that with their kids and their kids. And it's like you are creating something that will long outlive you, but will also benefit your kids and your kids' kids and your kids' kids. And I just think that's really special. And it even makes me feel emotional, like thinking about it. I think it's awesome.
Thank you.
Sure.
That's super kind. And again, I think a lot of it is my wife, and then B, my wife's childhood. Like my wife was raised, especially by a dad who did that really well. And so Janae has just always had a really sweet relationship with her dad because I feel like Janae was always able to talk about her feelings and emotions and everything she was going through and feel completely safe and completely heard. And like, that's just inspired me because like, yeah, it's really sweet to watch that when it's like an adult has had that happen throughout their entire life. And so they can have a healthy relationship with their emotions. Not to say you don't have hard things, and you know, my wife isn't perfect, believe it or not. But
Fooled
like,
me.
but it's just like compared to where I'm at with emotions and figuring it out at 23, 24, like, yeah, you can definitely see the two different lifestyles with that. So.
So you talking about your kids makes me want to dive back into when we were kids, because I think your kids are going to be insanely emotionally intelligent, and especially when they become, you know, we were what, you guys were 6 when you were friends, and I would have been 10, and we grew up from there probably. I just like, I feel like I missed what they're going to have, which is the ability to articulate and to intimately talk with your friends about your feelings. And maybe it's more of a feminine thing and a masculine thing. Like, but when we were friends and in our friend group, I say we were friends, there were 2 more that aren't here right now that made up like this group. Like it was us 5.
Yeah.
We were together
Ride or die.
maybe every weekend of a summer for 5 or 6 years.
Multiple times a week during the summer, I would say.
Yeah. So in that group, because we all grew up Christian, it was the only ways we were intimate with each other were through like Bible studies and worship. But outside of that, just relationally, there was rarely any intimate conversations about fears and hopes and anxieties and whatever. But do you have that same experience?
I would say yes to that. I would say the relational side of things with the other 2 that aren't here right now, I probably connected to them more in that aspect.
That intimate way.
Yeah. But you guys know I never did for some weird reason.
I think I know the weird reason. I think they had parents who were very loving and soft and gentle, which gave them the openness to be loving and soft and gentle. Like they were just a very gentle family.
Yeah, for sure.
And like it or not, like whether it's good or bad, our family wasn't gentle. And I was pretty I liked reaping the gentleness of their family, but I did not like.
Did you say reaping
I said
or
reaping.
raping?
I said reaping.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify.
I liked enjoying the gentleness of their family, but I didn't like contributing to it. I didn't like giving gentleness back because that made me incredibly anxious.
It's pretty vulnerable.
It was asking you to be vulnerable.
Exactly.
That was uncomfortable.
So what's your experience with vulnerability in friendships with us specifically, with me and George? Like, why was it hard? Yeah, growing up.
Well, it was non-existent, I would say, for the most part. I mean, I don't remember. Honestly, like, the most vulnerable, I don't know. Like, I can't think of a specific conversation or a specific instance that was like, oh, I was really vulnerable in this way. Growing up, I would say there's been, obviously, later teen years and stuff, like walking out friendships and adulthood now, there's been much more vulnerability. But I wouldn't say, like, growing up, I can't really think of a ton of vulnerability. Like,
No.
George, what was your experience with vulnerability?
The experience that comes to mind is like junior year of high school. I remember like you were in a like just like rough phase of your life, but coming out of that phase. And I remember some like flag football game that my brother Toby was putting on, and you like came, or we were trying to hang out, and I was like, oh, by the way, you should come to this flag football thing.
Yeah.
And then you came and picked me up, and we drove to it, and it was like on the other side of Wichita.
it was like the west side of Wichita.
Yeah,
the Y or
something really far.
right?
Yeah, and then like I fucked up the directions.
Yeah, I remember that.
So you were on a highway going the opposite direction for like 20 minutes, and then we finally realized it, turned back around, and we were going back to your house in El Dorado to like pick up your shoes or something after the game. And then you still had to take me back. So we had like 2 hours, I feel like, to just talk.
We had some window time.
Yeah. So by necessity, we were vulnerable because we had 2 hours. But all that to say, I remember you opening up about just some like shit you been through, and just like I remember just feeling like really close to you in that moment because we were like older now. We weren't still kids. I don't think I was vulnerable though. Like I just remember some semblance of vulnerability.
That's awesome.
But that's about
amazing.
all. But I remember it very fondly.
Yeah.
So what do you think the relationship is between that and our masculinity versus that and just like the parenting styles that we grew up with. Like, did you, Ryan, grow up in a house that would have thought that was like gay or girl shit to open up about your feelings at 14 years old with your friends?
I don't. Yeah, I want to be careful with this because I don't think I was ever like told that.
Oh yeah.
Probably just like
I agree with that, by the way.
What
I think
felt like was maybe applied behind, like read between the lines type
Yeah.
of a thing. So I was always known in my family as like, yeah, like super emotional. I cried literally about everything. Not necessarily like I don't like remember like crying a lot, like getting hurt. I just remember crying like with sad things or things that gave me anxiety. I would just break down crying. And so I was kind of known for that. And it wasn't, besides my mom, it wasn't really
acceptable.
Encouraged.
It just wasn't like a, hey, good for you. Like, it was
Yeah.
kind of like, oh yeah, Ryan cries a lot. Like,
Okay.
there's that. I remember we did like this little like Christmas show with just my family and cousins and everything. And I was just standing there and I was looking at all my family and I just got super emotional and I just cried. And I said, I'm just so emotional because of how much I love all of you. I remember that to this day. I was probably 7 years old and it was Christmas and, you know, everything's more magical at Christmas. So like I did that kind of stuff. And some people, I can remember specific people throughout my life who like spoke into that and were like encouraging with that. Like that's a really sweet quality that you have. Like, and then I went through several years of suppressing those emotions for a lot of other reasons, a lot of hurt and a lot of things that I wasn't talking about and wasn't exposing for later until my teen years. But yeah, I just didn't like it. And in the last few years, I've become more into that person that I once was, which is I'm really thankful for, especially for my kids' sake. Like, I don't care if my kids see me cry. Like, I think that's a really beautiful thing to see somebody you love emotional about different things. So, yeah, it wasn't ever like I would say this, like I felt more like I could connect to the female population of my family and connect emotionally much easier in conversation and relationship with them. And that confused me for a long time. Still to this day.
Yeah, do you think you understand it now? Or?
No, not fully. I think the biggest influence in my life at that time, though, growing up, was my mom. And I was really close with my mom. And so that's just who I looked up to. And so I think in some weird way, I then just appreciated and felt safe with women. And so I had a ton of girl cousins, and I just was always around girls and just really got comfortable talking to girls. And the funny thing about that is like that was the opposite of all my friends. Like a lot of my friends growing up didn't know how to interact or talk with girls. And so it's like I had this weird complex of like, oh, I can talk to them.
Yeah.
I actually have a way easier time than talking to you guys because you guys are a bunch of jackasses just talking about sports. Like I don't care about that. Like
No, I was always envious of your ability to have female friends.
and it helps when a lot of them are your cousins. Let's be
You did
honest.
have that too. I had a crush on all of your cousins.
Yeah, most of my friends did. I
Everyone
think.
had a crush on all of your cousins.
Yeah, for sure.
Your cousins were like the only girls in our
Yeah,
That were my
community.
sister.
Yeah. And I would say in the last few years too, it's gotten like better with relationships with guys. Like I've learned how to do that.
Because you like football now.
Yeah, I like sports, you know, all the things. I finally accepted who I am as a guy. So, but yeah, so that's been sweet because like I've been able to have a couple really close friendships with guys.
And are they sharing that like emotional side of themselves with you that you like are so in tune with?
Yeah, I feel like they're, yeah, absolutely. Not all the time. Just like I don't do that all the time. Like we're also just guys and like hang out or whatever. But yeah, those people that I'm close with are at different times. We've all been vulnerable with one another, talking about hurts or what we're going through or different things like that. So yeah, really thankful.
So, George, what was your experience with vulnerability as a whole? Like, did you find it hard to be vulnerable with people at all, or with your guy friends, or like, What does that make you feel when you think back to 11-year-old George and vulnerability?
Similar to what you said when we were talking about our friends in our friend group, about how their mom was really gentle and how you liked consuming it but not like partaking in it. Similar to that, when it comes to vulnerability, I always felt comfortable listening when people were vulnerable.
Kind of like on the road trip with Ryan back and forth from his
Totally.
house. Just listening to him.
We
Totally.
probably talked an hour and 55 minutes of our 2-hour conversation.
Which, honestly, that's kind of just this podcast. Now that I think about it. Wait a second.
I have
No,
not
wait,
changed.
guys, stop.
Get him.
Okay. All right. But I just feel like, I was always very comfortable listening. When I knew how vulnerable someone was with me, how comfortable they were, I knew like kind of what the guidelines were of our relationship, if that makes sense. I knew how vulnerable I could now be, but I was never pushing that limit. They would always set the bar for the vulnerability level.
Yeah.
So that like tracks with every friendship I had early on. Because listening was just always a way more comfortable space to be in. And obviously, because they're the ones being vulnerable, and I'm allowed to kind of sit back and just be the supportive friend.
Which you did really well at, I would say. And is needed to, like, the world needs more people to just listen.
Oh, yeah, to give a space for like, that's just as important, I think. To give a space
absolutely.
For that.
Yeah.
And that's all I had the emotional bandwidth for was at that time was, just to listen. And I was a quiet kid, so I think people naturally are drawn to that. I remember Maddie mentioning that on our episode a few weeks ago. But yeah, when you are generally quiet, people can like, I don't know, they just feel comfortable around you. So yeah, that was my experience with vulnerability, was kind of being on the receiving end. And it was very, like, I enjoyed it. And a lot of my friends were like, we're older. You were a little older. Jack was 4 years older. So I got to, like, learn a lot. I took a lot from their vulnerability.
I think that's why you're a good listener, because you listened to, like, understand, not to just, like, hear.
Yeah.
And I just genuinely always felt like you got what I was saying because you were trying to get what I was saying.
Yeah. And that's the, like, beauty of, like, being the sixth kid in our family was... I get to just take bits and pieces from each older brother.
You get to like take apart and build the best person out of all of them.
Right. That's the goal. So
it's like NBA 2K on steroids. It's your real life.
Just putting together the best thing you can.
Yeah.
All right. Teddy's the public speaker, so I'll take a little bit of that, but I don't want all of it.
Not too much.
Not too much.
It's funny because I think back to when I was a kid, and I think people thought I was like a vulnerable, open person, but I think I was really good at putting forward a sense of vulnerability, but like kind of in a performative way to make it seem like I was, but not ever in a true way. Like I don't think I ever shared how anxious I was all the time with anyone. Like I don't think anyone knew that I was always terrified and always sad and always scared. Because it wasn't a fun way to, I was about to say it wasn't a fun way to be vulnerable, but if I'm being true, it wasn't vulnerable. It wasn't vulnerable at all because I was putting on this sort of like faux vulnerability by talking about my sins, which was easy to talk about. And it was vulnerable to talk about my sins.
Yeah.
But it was also easier to talk about my sins than it was to talk about my anxieties.
Yeah.
And it was more available to me, and I had the art, the language for it, because I grew up in that world where we talk about sins, but we don't talk about anxieties.
Yeah, we don't talk about mental health stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I just found that interesting thinking back, asking you guys and wondering, was I actually vulnerable with people? Like I felt like, at that time, I think I felt like I was, or people told me I was like, oh wow, it's so great for you to open up like that. And I was trying to think like, why did I never actually feel like I was like actually opening up to people? Maybe in high school I did. I had a couple friends who I was like pretty deeply intimate with emotionally that I still feel close to now. But yeah, before then, with like you guys, I didn't really ever feel like I opened up that much. And I'm not really sure what that is. I don't think I've ever really unpacked
like,
that.
Can we give ourselves some grace? We were like 12.
That's true. Well,
Yeah, it's so true.
I'm saying
The deepest thing we could get into was like, I looked at porn the other day. Like, I feel bad about it.
But I mean, I think Yes, I think that's true. And I'm definitely not saying I should have been. I don't think there's a judgment on that as much as there is an acknowledgement and awareness of like, I was going through something I could not articulate and did not have the vulnerability skills to bring anyone else in on that because I was petrified.
Yeah.
Like that's, I think, more the point that I'm making is like, I wish, which of course that's what growing up is, but I wish I had the skills then that I do now and the lack of anxiety and the freedom to say, I'm really fucking terrified. Like something, for instance, and this just shows how good of a listener George is, we joked about it in our last episode because it's funny, but we got some really mean-spirited TikTok comments.
You guys post this on TikTok?
We posted a video. We had shot a video of me and George.
Okay.
And we posted a TikTok that I thought was funny. It was a little silly, a little
grade
dumb.
A content.
It was grade A content. But I didn't think it was going to be hung in the Louvre anytime soon. But I thought it was kind of cute. And I shared it. Boom. 4 comments immediately. Get a job. You're not funny.
Don't quit your day job.
Don't quit your day job.
Oh my gosh.
Anyone who thinks this is funny has an issue. And I'm scared for them. Oh, gosh. Holy shit.
Ryan, that wasn't you, right?
Oh, wait. What did it,
But no, that sucked.
It sucked. But I immediately put on this front like I am. George just opened his beer and spilled it all over him.
I shook it a little too much.
Why did you shake your beer? That doesn't make any sense.
It was in my crotch, and I repositioned, and it was bad. It was just bad.
George is like, wait, you guys don't shake your beers before you drink it?
Yeah, this time when I shook it, it was just a little too much. Usually it makes it taste better.
You were saying.
We got those TikTok comments, and for the first week, I was hard about it. I was like, oh, those don't get to me. those dudes are just being silly, but I'm better than that. I'm better than that affecting me. And then finally I had to tell George, I like sat down and I was like, hey, can I tell you something? I'm really sad about that. That made me feel really bad in my heart that people were so mean to me.
Yeah.
And it was deeply difficult to open up to you about that and like deeply vulnerable. Because it felt I didn't want to be. I didn't want to be sad about that.
Yeah.
I wanted to be cool, and I wanted you to see me as cool and too good for that and better than that.
Because something we touched on was like you and I both like enjoy consuming content similar to this, like a podcast or like content creators online on YouTube or whatever, and watching them deal with hate comments.
Yeah.
We always watch that and are like, just don't read the comments.
Yeah,
Like
don't
it's
read
just
it.
as simple as that. Like they're no names, they don't matter. And then when you receive it, it's like,
Oh, I bet.
oh, okay, that felt
hurts
different.
my feelings.
So I think that was a lot of it too. Is like you and I both knew
The right
about
way.
it. Like
Yeah.
we knew that was potentially could happen, and thought we were braced for it. And so I think, you opening up about that was just like really good to hear.
Yeah. It was hard. And I think that's what I mean. I wish I had the capacity to do that when I was 12 because there were things that hit me when I was 12 that I wish I also could have said. That really hurt my feelings to hear somebody say that to me. And I'm going to be thinking about that for months now unless I get it out. But I never got it out. So I just thought about it for months. And like those things still like they turned into scars at some point.
Yeah.
So now I still think back to the time this person said this because I never had anyone that I could open up about and be like, man, when that person said that, it like fucked up my entire week.
Yeah.
And now I'm stuck with it. So I don't know. I just think all coming back to, I think it's truly a gift what you're giving your daughters that they will have the emotional maturity and hopefully the people, the space to talk about those big feelings with.
Yeah.
Totally.
I actually just remembered a time that I was vulnerable with you and you were pretty vulnerable with me.
Really?
We were,
Is it at Brahms?
yeah.
Yeah, baby. I remember too.
I
love Brahms.
I remember too.
It wasn't the El Dorado Brahms. Why
No, we were
at,
in
like,
Wichita.
we were in
I can't
Wichita.
relate to the story, but I can relate to Brahms.
George, shut up about Brahms.
This isn't about you, bro.
You're-
I'm more of a like twist frozen yogurt.
Hey. Hey, George,
Kinda guy?
be what you've been your whole life and be a listener, okay?
Fuck
Jeez.
this. Fuck this.
George, I wanted to hear about your frozen yogurt.
Okay, so I'm more of a waffle.
But
cone
later,
guy,
though.
okay?
Oh,
Later, buddy.
Waffle cone for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, waffle cone
Okay.
superior. Everybody knows that.
All right.
Yeah. Maybe we played basketball. I probably went over to be a good friend and play basketball with you idiots. I think maybe at the Greens. Their sports court. I can't remember.
Oh, and then after we went to Brahms, you're saying?
I think so.
Maybe that happened.
That's-
that would
rings
be
a
the
bell.
only thing that I would make sense.
I just remember
in
the
my brain.
conversation. I think about the conversation all the time, though.
Yeah.
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 But that was you opening up to me, which I really appreciated.
Yeah. Yeah, and I feel like you were very accepting and like a safe space for that. So obviously you weren't like vulnerable with sharing stuff like with yourself, but like I still feel like there's a level of being vulnerable when you just can sit there with somebody and take it in, like what they're processing or going through.
You don't
and,
shut
like,
it down.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
thanks for being vulnerable.
Yeah. I love you, Ryan.
Love you guys. Just
I
kidding.
love you
Hate
guys. I love you guys too.
Shut up, George. Oh my gosh.
I remember Brahms.
You weren't. Why weren't you there? That was the real question.
Wait, what the? What was it that day? He edits these normally, so he's gonna have to deal with all this bullshit.
All right.
Jump.
Thank you all for listening to this episode where we just reminisced about childhood with one of our best childhood buds, Ryan. Ryan, what was your favorite thing we talked about this episode?
Man,
Make it funny.
there's just literally the voice that's been in my head for 23 years. So thanks
it
for
funny.
that trigger. I'm gonna think about that for the next week. Man, that's another conversation in itself. I'll be back for part 2 on that.
Where we talk about coping with comedy.
Yeah, coping with triggers. Let's just title it that. No, definitely my favorite thing was talking about parenting, and I mean just childhood memories. It's fun to think back to those happy memories. There's some not so happy memories, I think, with all of our childhoods. So when we can talk about the happy ones,
Yeah.
that's sweet.
Yeah, I totally agree. I loved hearing you talk about your daughter. I mean, you had joked that you wanted to cut that short. I could have heard you talk about that for 30 more minutes. Like
Totally.
Hearing a parent, especially a young parent, and especially someone I grew up with, be so regulated and so thoughtful and articulate. I could listen to that forever. That was
Cool.
like truly beautiful to listen to. So
Thanks.
Thank you so much for sharing.
Absolutely.
Totally.
George, what was your favorite part?
My favorite part was when we all went to Brahms together and had a heart-to-heart about how we feel
With our waffle cones.
with our waffle cone frozen yogurt.
Yeah,
that was my favorite.
That was
part.
my favorite too. Yeah, George. That was my
I
favorite
wish you
too.
could have been there for that.
Well, thank you guys for listening. That was the 9th episode of That Which Binds Us. Third to last. We have 2 more. 1 more and then the finale. And
I'm so sorry.
Ryan?
Can I say one last thing?
you may.
Because I did it in the last episode, and I was really glad I did. But then I almost got insecure and didn't do it. So I'm going to do it now. I'm going to applaud you guys for what you're doing on this podcast. I know there's probably a lot of hours and a lot of grueling pain that goes into making these. And I think part of this podcast for you guys, and I mean, for myself, honestly, coming on and talking about childhood is therapeutic in a way. And so I'm sure that's at a bigger level for you guys because you guys are really vulnerable and talk about a lot of stuff and just don't care what you're saying. And it's really, I'm just very amazed that you guys just feel the freedom. And I'm so glad you guys feel the freedom to do that and just be yourselves, probably from our adulthood, from what I'm seeing for the first time. And you guys are just really beautiful people. And so it's fun to listen and just get to be a part of this. So thanks for having me.
Wow. Thank you, Ryan.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan.
That was really sweet. Well,
Appreciate it.
we could just end it on that. That was
No, you can do like the
That was beautiful.
season, whatever.
no, that
episode,
was
whatever.
a great ending. I don't need any more.
No notes.
You know what,
No
Ryan?
notes.
That is That Which Binds Us.
He did it. Thank you, everyone, for listening. That was episode 9 of That Which Binds Us. Tune in next week for episode 10.
See you on the next one. Later.